Hello everybody and welcome back to another JavaScript tutorial. So in this video we're going to be talking about sets. Now sets are another data type in JavaScript. I've left them until now because they are a little bit more advanced and I'd want to show the difference between sets and arrays. Now what is a set? Well, essentially a set is an unordered collection of unique elements. Now collection, just like array, means it holds multiple elements. Unordered means we don't keep track of the order of the elements, although we kind of do, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then unique means that no elements can exist more than once. So recall when we created an array, so I said like var arr equals, and then we made an array and we did something like, 2, 3, 4, whatever, right? These elements, I could have multiple of the same, and that was totally fine. And we keep track of the order in which our elements occur. We can index these, so I can access element 0, I could access element 4, you know what I mean, or element 5, whatever I want. And that's an important property of arrays, is that we understand the order and we can access each element individually. Now sets are a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is just call this underscore set because set is a keyword. What I'm going to do is create a new set. Now with a set, we cannot actually index elements directly. All we can do is see if elements exist in the set. We can delete elements and we can add elements from the set. There's a few other operations which I'll talk about, but there's no way to look at every individual element in the set and see, like index 0, index 1. There's no way to do that with the sets unless you do some special stuff, which isn't really that important. So anyways, that is kind of what a set is. And I'm going to show you because I know some of you guys are confused. It is hard to kind of explain this. So what I'm going to do is add a few elements to my set. Now, I'm actually allowed to chain these add methods together like this. It's just a property of the set. This works because when this add method is called, it actually just returns the original set, which allows me to just do this chain. If you don't understand that, that's fine. But if I want to add elements, what I can do is do something like set.add. So now I have 3, I can add 5. I could add the element 7. And now what I'm going to do is actually add the same element 3 again because I want to show you what this set looks like. So keep in mind that a set is an unordered collection of unique elements. Now try to remember, like based off that definition, what are we going to get when I print out this set? Let's have a look at it here. Let's refresh. We get 3, 5, and 7. And notice that although I've added 3 twice, 3 only exists in the set once. That is because, again, these are unique. So you can add the same element multiple times into the set if you want, but it's only going to exist there once. And the reason for this is because when we use sets, we only care if elements exist. We don't care how many elements or the frequency of elements. So what I'm going to do now is actually have a look at the has method for a set, so .has, which tells me if the set has a specific element in it. So in this case, if I do set.has2, you can guess what the result's going to be here, which is false. And if I do set.has, let's say 5, an element that does exist in our set, and we refresh, we get the value true. Now, the massive advantage of this is that sets actually have what's called an O1 lookup time. Now, I'm not going to go into time complexities, which some of you might have heard of before, but what that means is sets are pretty much instant to determine if any item exists in them. Now, you might be like, okay, well, that's the same as arrays, right? Well, let me explain to you how we look up items in arrays versus sets and the difference between the two, because you do need to understand this so you can understand when you would even want to use a set. So if we have an array, and I'll put the same elements in it, so 3, 5, 7, if I want to look to see if some element exists in the set, let's say the element, -5 or something like that, or sorry, not the set, in the array. What I need to do is I need to actually look through every single element in my array and check if those elements are equal to what I'm looking for. That's, the basic principle of an array. We have all these different elements. We could have multiple of the same elements. If I want to find if something exists, however, though, I could potentially have to look through every single item in the array to find it. Now, obviously, if an item exists, so say 3, when I reach that item, I can determine that I found it. But if the item doesn't exist, like -5, I have to look through every single element to determine if it's there or not. Now, in an array of size 3, this is totally fine. It doesn't take very long computationally to determine, out of 3 elements, if an element exists. But imagine we had an array that had 10,000 elements inside of it. Well, now, what if I'm doing constant lookups on this array? And, every loop, per se, maybe I'm in a for loop, I'm checking whether a certain element exists. Well, this is obviously going to take a very long time. I need to loop through the entire array, and that is just not very efficient to continually do when all I really care about is if an element exists. So this is where we use a set. It doesn't matter how many elements are inside of a set. it will maintain an average lookup time, which is called O1, which is constant time, which essentially means it doesn't matter how big this set gets, it will continue to take the same amount of time, which is a very, very small fraction of time, to determine if an element is inside of it. So that is kind of where sets are useful and why you'd want to use them. Typically, when you're solving programming problems and doing stuff like that, sets are a very nice data structure to have and to be able to use, or data type, whatever you want to call it. So let's go through a few other methods of the set now. Hopefully you understand a little bit about why we might want to use it. So another method we have for set, I'm just going to look at my thing here. It's not actually a method, it's just the attribute is the size. So just like arrays and the other ones that we've looked at, we can check the size. So let's do a refresh here. We get a size of 3. So pretty straightforward there. We can also delete elements. So I can delete, say, element 5. Let's actually have a look at what this .delete method returns by refreshing this for us. Returns true, which means this element did exist inside of the set. So when we deleted it, we got that true value. Now let me just console.log the set afterwards so you can see the difference when I delete that element. So let's look at this here. Refresh, we get set 37. We've removed 5 from that. And now what I'm going to do is actually set.delete 5. Let's see what happens when we delete an element that doesn't exist in the set. So let's try delete 5 again. So we delete 5 up here. Remember, it exists in the set in this instance. And then down here, when we delete 5, it doesn't exist because we just removed it. So what do we get as the output from that method? Well, we get false because that means when we tried to delete 5, it didn't exist inside of the set. Okay, so those are the basic properties of the set. Another one that we can use is .values. This one's kind of useful. What this will do is return to us all of the values inside of the set in the order in which they were inserted. So we get 3, 5, 7. That should be our output there, and that should give it to us in an array. Let's have a look. Oh, sorry, that's actually a set iterator, which I'm not really going to go into so much, but you can see the different values, 3, 5, and 7. And that is giving it to us in the order in which it was inserted. Now, the reason I said that sets have an unordered collection is because technically, if I did something like .add 3, like this, our set still only looks like 3, 5, 7. Even though I've added 3 at the end and I've added 3 at the beginning and at the second position, we only have 3, 5, 7. So although this does keep track of the order in which it's seen elements, it keeps track of the order in which it saw the first element that was inserted into the set. If you're confused by that, it's fine. You don't really have to worry about that too much. I just want to explain why I said unordered, yet some of you might consider this to be an ordered collection. Okay, so now let me just show you using a for loop to iterate through all of the elements in a set. So this is pretty straightforward. What we're going to do is say for, and we'll just say var, I don't know, entry, and then of, in this case, we're going to say underscore set dot values. It's important we add this. And this is going to give us what's called an iterator object, which will actually allow us to just look through the different values. So now we can just console.log in here, I guess, oops, and console.log entry. So let's have a look at this. If we refresh, we get 3, 5, 7. That is how we iterate through the different values of a set. Okay, so I've just cleared some of this code, and what I'm going to do now is talk about the set constructor, which is something I kind of skimmed over at the beginning. So obviously to create a new set, what we've done is just typed new set, but what we can do is actually give some arguments to what we call the set constructor, which is this aspect right here, that will create a new set for us. Now, what I can do is actually fill in some things in here. I can actually put what's called an iterable object. So for our purposes, that's going to be an array or a string for right now. And it will create a set using those items. So if I decide to do an array maybe that looks something like this, well, let's just have a look at this when I create this set. So console.log set1, let's have a look at what this is, refresh. We get set for 1, 3, 4, 5. So it's taken all these elements, converted them into a set, and that is what we get. Now I can also put a string in here, so I can do something like hello, and if we have a look at set1, again, remember I changed the name there, we get HELO. Again, what we've done is we've separated all of the letters, added them all into the set. Since L existed twice, we only get it once because that is the property of a set. Now in terms of some other set operations, there is set operations like union, difference, and those kind of things in other languages, but I could be incorrect as I'm just learning JavaScript, but I've tried to use, for example, the union method, and this does not work. I believe you actually have to implement these methods manually, which is not that difficult, where union simply means, for anyone confused, combine two sets together. That's what union means, but I don't think they actually have a built-in method for that, which is kind of annoying, but That's fine, we can deal with it. Now I will show you one cool method that the sets do have, but it's going to involve me creating a function first. So let's do that. So let's say function test like this, and all we're going to do is actually, let's put an X in here, is just say console.log X. Now we're going to use this function from what's called the for each method of our set. Now this is kind of cool. We'll talk about how this works. So set for each, and then what I can actually do is just put the name of the function in here. Now what this is going to do is for each element in my set, call this function on it and pass the value of that into this function. So we're actually going to print every value of our set, or everything in our set, just by using this. So let's have a look at this here. Refresh. What is happening here? Let's, 1 second. Refresh. Set is not defined at, oh, sorry, this needs to be set1. My apologies. Let's refresh this one more time. And we get HELO. So in my opinion, that is pretty cool. What's happening is we can pick some function and we will apply all the operations on each element from our set, you know, using this function, right? So we're just going to call this function on every element from our set. In this case, we're just console.logging, but we could obviously do some more advanced things. Like we could check if this was a certain item. I could say if X equals, let's just say the letter L, then we will simply console.log found it, and then we'll otherwise just say else console.log nope. Okay, so let's have a look at this now and see what we get. So refresh, we get nope twice, found it, and then nope. So you get the idea. We can create whatever we want. We can use this for each, which is very useful, and then apply this function to every element inside of our set. So anyways, I think that has been it for sets. There's a few other small things I could talk about, but I don't find them that important, so I'm going to skip them for now. As always, if you guys have any questions, make sure to leave them down below and let me know what you want to see from the rest of these JavaScript tutorials.